Were the Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, I know Americans don't care about WhatsApp, outages a result of something strange, a conspiracy due to the whistleblower revelations? Is it evidence that you can't have ongoing monopolies? You can't put that much power in one centralized place, or it's risky? Or is it just a coincidence and a tech issue? Let's have a look at it.
Tonight, major outages affecting billions of users of Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. All of it starting this morning and continuing through the day. All of the sites owned by Facebook.
Firstly, Edward Snowden, talking about the outages, said Facebook, WhatsApp and Instagram all going down at the exact same time sure seems like an easily understandable and publicly popular example of why breaking up a certain monopoly into at least 3 pieces might not be a bad idea. So let's see whether or not we believe, you believe, I believe, all of us believe that it's possible that these outages are in any way connected to recent events. And even if they're not connected to these Facebook whistleblower events, you should hear this stuff because someone has taken a very, very brave stand. It's not easy to talk out against power. It's a frightening position to find yourself in. This woman has done an incredibly brave thing. Let's crack into the story because she reveals stuff about Facebook that I know you're going to find surprising. According to this whistleblower, Facebook puts astronomical profits before people, harms children, and is destabilizing democracies. Bloody hell. I mean, imagine having that much. How powerful is Facebook? What we have to remember is, of course, it's run by, regular human beings. Even Zuckerberg, that guy is a person like you, me, born, going to die. That's my assumption. But that amount of power that you can destabilize a democracy. I mean, who else can do that other than countries? That's normally the job of a country, isn't it? There's a democracy cropping up in Latin America, sir.
You better destabilize that fast, General.
Facebook has realized that if they change the algorithm to be safer, people will spend less time on the site, they'll click on less ads, they'll make less money.
So that shows you, right, that's a really fascinating point. It's already determined the function of Facebook is the facade of Facebook is a social media site. The raison d'etre of Facebook is make as much money as possible through ad revenue, keep people on the site, be able to promise people you've got to do this. It's very difficult, even with a small business, not to get distracted and disconnected and think, well, the only thing that matters is that we get lots of, it's hard. That's a pressure, an ideological pressure placed on you by the economic demands of the system, corporatism, late capitalism, advanced capitalism, call it what you will. But unless there is some sort of regulation, unless there is on this scale, no room for regulation, come on.
The company's leadership knows how to make Facebook and Instagram safer, but won't make the necessary changes because they have put their astronomical profits before people.
This always happens. It's very difficult to control or prevent that from happening. As I hope you know by now, I'm not advocating for some sort of Stalinist 20th century style communism. I'm talking about decentralized power, regulation, the prohibition of these sort of colonialist, imperialist projects that may start, who knows, with the ingenuity of 1 or 2 or 5 people, but end up as dominion. There's no point going, oh, well, it just happened. Look what's happening now. Look what's happening now. As long as the incentive is make as much money as possible, as long as that's like a credos that cannot be challenged, and no, you can't argue with that. That's what has to happen. Shareholders, that's how our system functions. Gotta. This is the results. This is how it behaves. This is how it behaves. It's not doing something wrong. It's doing what it's designed to do. Hold on a minute. This killer robot's killing people. Yeah, well, it's a killer robot. Yeah, but come on, get it off me. It just bit my arm. It's a killer robot.
During my time at Facebook, I came to realize a devastating truth. Almost no one outside of Facebook knows what happens inside of Facebook.
The first rule of Facebook is you should like as many friends as possible. Well, the second rule of Facebook is you do not talk about. The third rule is polemicize orders. And the fourth rule is just be a bit sketchy around organisation. The fifth rule of Facebook is if you have to appoint a regulatory body, fund that regulatory. The sixth rule of Facebook, it's quite a lot of rules of Facebook, it's not the same as Fight Club, it's actually better organised.
The company intentionally hides vital information from the public, from the US government, and from governments around the world. The documents I have provided to Congress prove that Facebook has repeatedly misled the public about what its own research reveals about the safety of children.
I tell you what, props to this woman doing this, man, because last week I had one article written about me saying I was a fan of Donald Trump, and another one saying I was a voice for anti-vax people. I nearly went and lived in a hole. I'm moving into a hole. That's enough of this. And then I realised, no, just keep pure-hearted, tell the truth. You have to tell the truth. People will be all right. People will come together if you're continually honest and you tell the truth. I'm a flawed, fallible human being. I ain't perfect. I don't pretend to be. I don't pretend to understand everything. But what I do claim, and it's a claim that many news organizations cannot make, is that I want to tell you the truth. And I respect you. And I respect your opinion. And I respect your right to be you. And I respect your right to disagree with me.
The efficacy of its artificial intelligence systems, and its role in spreading divisive and extreme messages.
That thumb starts to look a bit mental, doesn't it? Because you imagine that thumb being thumbed up to all of the various things. Ding, ding, ding. Destabilizing democracy. Ding, ding, ding.
Facebook wants to trick you into thinking that privacy protections or changes to Section 230 alone will be sufficient. While important, these will not get to the core of the issue, which is that no one truly understands the destructive choices made by Facebook except Facebook.
It points to like a fundamental thing that Facebook can't share that information, because if it shared that information, it would mean it would be exposed to regulatory forces that it wouldn't want to deal with. It shows you also that the American government, powerful set of institutions, though that is, are not sufficiently powerful, or at least not empowered to confront Facebook, precisely because however things are now, and I'm not attacking the constitution of your wonderful nation, but where we find ourselves now is these sort of things, the corporate world and the governmental space, are interwoven. The government, if it comes to the crunch about will the government stand up to giants on behalf of the people, the answer is no. It is not set up to do that. It will not do that. It cannot do that. We have, in a sense, got to stop looking at individuals within systems and start looking at systems themselves. Without an alteration, fundamental alterations to systems, we can see where they will lead. It doesn't matter who you pick out or put in, put this person in, take this person out, put a female one in, put a male one in, different colours. It's the system is the thing. If that doesn't change, you're just dancing around, mucking around with wallpaper.
As long as Facebook is operating in the shadows, hiding its research from public scrutiny, it is unaccountable. Until the incentives change, Facebook will not change. Left alone, Facebook will continue to make choices that go against the common good.
Now, at this point, the whistleblower's claims, whilst based on documentary evidence, are of course not proven, and presumably this congressional hearing is in order to ascertain the validity of these claims. However, what no one can dispute is that Facebook has unprecedented power. I suppose what we're dealing with these tech giants has no obvious comparison other than the industrial giants of a century ago, when steel magnates and like Carnegie and all them dudes in America just amassed super wealth and were able to monopolize stuff and control industries and therefore fix pricing and all of that. But this now, as it says in documentaries that you will have seen, and as other people that are experts in the industry have spoken out about, Tristan on our podcast on Under the Skin speaks, Tristan Harris, he speaks very eloquently on this subject, using very good metaphors. What's being mind manipulated and controlled is consciousness and attention itself. They would say attention, but I would say consciousness, wouldn't I? So, like, you know, if you are able to pool together people's minds, that's a weird thing, man. If you're able to manipulate people's moods, manage people's moods up or down, that's a level of social control that, you know, I guess you sort of think of as being in the realm of sci-fi, and you don't notice it in plain sight, because I suppose we have so many competing influences. And I guess where you've got to start, though it be anecdotally, is with your own life and how much of your time are you staring at a screen? How many of your emotions have been elicited by something you've seen on a screen? How many times have you been made angry or fearful or ashamed because of something you've read on a screen? And the idea that there might be an economic imperative behind the emotions that you, fellow human, are feeling, for me, is a sort of a cause of some concern. And anyone that attempts to sort of centralize that power and shut down any opposition to it, I think is doubling down on a type of digital tyranny. That's just my opinion, of course.
A company with such frightening influence over so many people, over their deepest thoughts, feelings, and behavior, needs real oversight. Today, Facebook shapes our perception of the world by choosing the information we see. Even those who don't use Facebook are impacted by the majority who do.
That's interesting. It's so pervasive that it doesn't even matter if you're not on it. Like, you're still going to be affected by the cultural attitudes that it engenders.
Facebook will tell you privacy means they can't give you data. This is not true. Not only does the company hide most of its own data, my disclosure has proved that when Facebook is directly asked questions as important as, how do you impact the health and safety of our children, they choose to mislead and misdirect.
I'm still trying to break it down, because obviously, I'm a person that's on Facebook, my content's on Facebook, I'm a person who's reliant on social media for business, like I'm sure many of you are, for communication and business, and you feel like, well, what actually is happening? Is there something nefarious? Is it the management of information? For example, many of you will have heard that when the young people stopped using Facebook, do you remember that? There was a sort of a moment where like you felt old if you were still on Facebook. Facebook? That's for my nan. Oh, sorry, yeah, but it's rubbish, isn't it? See you in a couple of hours, Grandma. Remember that moment? Well, apparently that was the time when Facebook were like, we need to use polemicizing information in order to remain relevant, to engage people emotionally. Now, we work on social media. Obviously, you'll have noticed that we use titles that are designed to grab your attention. But hopefully, once you get into the content, you realize we're trying to present a balanced, intelligent, spiritually oriented point of view on complex issues that affect everybody's lives. Now, Facebook, a behemoth of such momentous proportions, are they able to behave in such a nuanced way? Is it, as Snowden says, irresponsible to have that much power? Even if you look at just them free apps, let alone the destabilizing democracy stuff that's going on down the line, is it responsible? Should monopolies always be broken up? Is it a good thing? Is centralized power, as I'm beginning to think, in any form dangerous?
Facebook has not earned our blind faith. Today, no regulator has a menu of solutions for how to fix Facebook, because Facebook didn't want them to know enough about what's causing the problems.
I suppose what it is, this is the problem with an algorithm, and I would argue materialistic rationalism more broadly. If you calculate everything along the lines of an economic imperative, you start to miss things like freedom, liberty, individual human emotions. If you're just looking at, oh, these images are doing well, or this has a good impact, these posts are effective, oh, these people spend more time online when they do this, this and this, all things that you can understand and see what the reasoning would be. I'm not suggesting that these organisations are peopled by inhuman monsters. I recognise that, people that are working at Facebook, they're human beings. Like, we're working, right now in a sort of a tech world on various social media platforms. And whenever I speak to human beings that work at those places, beautiful human beings. This is just an advance of the ideologies, the free market, late capitalist, or corporatism, a lot of you like, because I check what you say in the comments, corporatist ideas that dominate our time, which do not allow for complex reason. If you want to learn a little more about these things, have a look at my podcast on Luminary. You can get it on Apple, of course. And there's people like Anwar Shaikh, an economist, talking about the motifs and mentality of capitalism. Tristan Harris talking about how social media gets inside your mind. Listen to Gabor Mate in his Limitless Compassion and about what's required to countenance these things. This is something that we have to approach critically, open-minded. We've got to stay focused. We've got to stay attention to stuff like this going on.
Facebook wants you to believe that the problems we're talking about are unsolvable. They want you to believe in false choices. They want you to believe that you must choose between a Facebook full of divisive and extreme content or losing one of the most important values our country was founded upon, free speech.
That's a very interesting part of the conversation, that free speech increasingly has become something that's sort of taboo to talk about, that's anti-free speech squared, isn't it? What do you mean free speech? Why are you talking about free speech? Are you a racist? No, what I mean by free speech is people are allowed to communicate freely and openly in a public sphere and disagree with one another. Let's not pretend that the dominant influence in this conversation isn't a financial, economic, profit-driven one. It's nothing about liberty, except as liberty pertains to those prevailing ideologies.
That you must choose between public oversight of Facebook's choices and your personal privacy. That to be able to share fun photos of your kids with old friends, you must also be inundated with anger-driven virality.
Want to share pictures of your kids? Oh, yeah, I'm very proud of this one. Oh, God, I wish I hadn't come on here.
They want you to believe that this is just part of the deal. I am here today to tell you that's not true.
Continually, we're sold the idea that the problems that we face in our society are the result of our own darkness, our own prejudices, our own bigotry and tendency towards conflict, when increasingly what it looks like now is that these deep human emotions are managed, manipulated, dragged to the surface by organisations with this level of power in order to create conflict, so we stay on their platforms for longer and so that we are in conflict with one another. A situation that I can see being beneficial to governments and various other authorities, because a people divided cannot ever confront the problems it truly needs to confront. If you walk down the street and you meet 10 people and one of them's a Republican, one of them's a Democrat, one of them's a Hindu, one of them's a Muslim, who gives a shit? You're just walking down the street, all right, mate, all right, how's it going? Yeah, all right, all right. You know, but if continually you're schooled in this person's against you, they're trying to take from you, continually, look, they disagree with this, you're in this heightened, unreal state of conflict. These are real hormonal, biochemical energies being stirred by masterful tech manipulators. Don't take responsibility. Don't take the blame that you're a bad person with prejudicial views. Normally, people will get along with each other just fine. The idea that we need all these centralized forces governing us, certainly very convenient for these centralized forces, isn't it? Well, we're only here because you need us to be here. Without us and us, you'd just be in disarray. We'll be fine, thank you very much. Organising our own communities, organising our own lives, getting along with one another in spite of obvious, necessary, and sometimes, frankly, enjoyable differences.
I came forward at great personal risk because I believe we still have time to act.
Well, Hogan is a hero. It's as plain as day, isn't it? Although I'm sure some people say, she's doing this to get her own TV show. I don't know. Looking at this person, I think this is a person who's taking a risk for their values that we need to promote, ideas that we need to share, a conversation that we need to have.
But we must act now. I'm asking you, our elected representatives, to act.
Another wrinkle to this is that the fact is it's difficult to regulate Facebook if the regulatory bodies are peopled with or relate to former Facebook employees. For example, it emerged recently that a top Democrat tech staffer has left Capitol Hill to lobby for Facebook. John Branscombe, who I'm sure is a decent guy, has spent more than a decade working for the Senate Commerce Committee, one of the leading congressional panels taking aim at the power of tech giants, and will join Facebook's federal policy team next month. So when you hear like that's a real life example of a human being that worked at Capitol Hill in the tech area, now is working at Facebook. Like, we lose ourselves in branding and logos. We're meant to. You're meant to see a logo and that logo provoke a potentially positive response that's emotional rather than rational. But behind these words, Facebook, Senate, government, are human beings and human relationships, limited, prohibited and controlled, in my view, by systemic requirement, but nonetheless having human interrelationships. This dude is going to be talking to people he used to work with, doing stuff that's related to his current job, connected to his old job. Oh, you'll find that bit of regulation, I'm an expert in that because I got past that. Yeah, I'm just using this as an example of something that is much more broadly understood to be a systemic problem. The revolving door between Washington and Wall Street, or Silicon Valley and Washington, or in my country, the city and government. The problem of lobbying is one that makes a mockery of democracy. The centralized power of tech giants, or the, I would say, unresponsive, undemocratic power of governments is a massive problem. And this little story, even though it begins from a crazy little moment where all of us are like, what's wrong with my phone? Why can't I talk to people whenever I want? Even though this whole shit didn't exist like 10 years ago. I can't cope without this. This is useless. Damn you. You know, it all starts with something trivial that we all experienced. But what does it point to? What does it allude to? Who knows? And who cares what I think? What you think is what's important. So let me know in the comments what you think. Give this video a thumbs up. Pass it around wherever you want. Get people to see this content. I'd love it if you'd subscribe to my mailing list, please, because then I can speak to you directly if ever I need to. And Lord knows that may be a possibility. So stay connected to me. Just one click away, you can be on my mailing list. I'll tell you about all sorts of stuff I'm up and I send you up to, and send you additional content too. If you like this video, have a look at this one. It's in a sort of comparable area. And by Jove, you should sign up and subscribe to my Awakening side channel. Have a look at this. If you're a football fan, listen to Football is Nice. Also available on YouTube. Stay with us. Stay free.